El Faizy joins us now from Paris. She is the co-author of All the President's Women, Donald Trump and the Making of a Predator. Monique, thank you so much indeed for your time. I mean, just those passages itself, there's so many books about Trump that say the same story time and time and time again. And yet many people who support him don't believe it. What do you make of some of the content of this book?
I think, like you said, I think all these books in the aggregate paint a very clear picture of a man who has racist views, sexist views. They reinforce one another. There's nothing in this book that should surprise us that we haven't heard before. And I think that the people who continue to support him and continue to disbelieve these stories, there's nothing that's going to change their minds at this point.
I think what's interesting in this situation is that considering that Michael Cohen has been given a jail term, of course, he's out now because of the coronavirus, but he is still under house arrest. And because of his time with Donald Trump and the stuff that he has already said in court and at Senate and congressional hearings, which are under oath, here he can say things that he doesn't necessarily have to back up in a court of law. So how much do you think might be exaggeration the way the White House is saying?
I think if this was the first book and if Michael Cohen was the first person we were hearing these things from, we would have reason for skepticism, given that he's an unreliable interlocutor at this point. Having said that, he's not saying anything we haven't heard before, and he's not saying anything that far more reliable people haven't said. So again, I think that this is one more brick in a wall of indictment against the president, or indicting stories against the president.
When you were writing your book about Donald Trump allegedly being a predator and how he became a predator and how he treats women, were you shocked yourself at some of the things that people were telling you? I mean, in fact, was there stuff that possibly you thought, I can't actually put that in the book because it's so libelous?
There are things that we didn't put in the book. We were very careful. Donald Trump has patterns when it comes, whether it be talking about women or talking about people of other races, he has patterns. And so we were very careful only to include things in the book that A, we could corroborate, and B, that fit these patterns. There are plenty of stories that may well be true that we didn't put in the book because they didn't fit those patterns. And we know there are women out there who didn't want to come forward.
What about the people who buy these books, who bought your book, who'll be buying Michael Cohen's book, who'll be buying Mary Trump, his niece's book? I mean, they're not necessarily going to be Trump supporters, because those supporters, the hardcore of them, they don't appear to care what anybody says about Donald Trump. They only take what they see on TV. But the people who buy the book, how can they influence the rest of American society to say, look, I've read this and I believe the sources and I'm amazed that this is the leader of the United States. And I say amazed because of what's in the books. I mean, just from the excerpts that we've read here, when you think that's the most powerful man in the world, how is that actually possible? I'm not making a personal opinion. I'm basing it on the excerpts from the books and the stuff, for example, that's in your book.
His behavior certainly is not presidential by the metrics that we have used in the past. So that's, I think, fair. I think that the more that these stories come out, the story that came out last week about his disparaging military families, I think that was damning, and I think that did damage to him. I think the more of these stories that come out, the harder it is to refute what we're hearing, the more people are going to be swayed to stop supporting him. Again, there is a core group of people that no matter what he says or does, he famously said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they would still support him. That's probably true. There are a core group of supporters that are never going to change their minds about him. But he needs more than that to win an election. And I think that we see that the soft spot in the middle, not even independents, formerly staunch Republicans are turning against him.
What's more,
whether that will translate to the ballot box, that remains to be seen.
What do you think is more important to the voters in November? Is how Donald Trump behaves, or actually the policies that he enacts that might make a difference to their lives? Because the way he behaves doesn't necessarily obviously equate to the same thing on the other side, in terms of if someone needs something in their life, they won't care if he's of a particular character as long as they get what they want. And then again, when you read the details in the books, are you able to actually intellectually try to connect the two together to say, if this man is in fact the way this book portrays him to be, can I ethically support him, even if it's going to mean $100 more in my pocket? It's difficult for an individual to say if they're not in, let's say, a financially challenging situation. But give us a sort of feeling how you might regard that particular dilemma that a voter will face.
I think, look, I think the morality horse has left the barn a long time ago. I think that what's interesting is that people who support him, many of them haven't personally benefited from his policies. They like this abstract notion of make America great again and that he's fighting on the world stage. They aren't necessarily better off on a day-to-day basis. You look at the coronavirus crisis, which has just been bungled in the U.S. The other thing we have to talk about is this core group of evangelicals who support him, and they don't need him to conform to their morals or their ideals. They need him to give them the judges they want, to try and outlaw abortion, and he's done that. He has delivered for evangelicals in a way that no other president has, and that's why they're loyal to him, despite all of the rest of it.
Yeah, it's interesting also that Michael Cohen pretty much says that he thinks that the Trump campaign was actually not quite even intelligent enough to collude with Russia in the 2016 election. But okay, away from the politics, give us one personal insight from your book, the thing that really stood out for you, that when you were writing it down after having done the interviews, you thought, I simply can't believe that this is going in the book.
I mean, I was skeptical about the word predator when I started writing the book. When you see these stories over and over and over, and you see these patterns and the complete disregard for women as people with agency and their own ideas and desires, they are really just objects there for his pleasure. And when you put all the stories together and you read them in the aggregate, the only conclusion is that he was a predator. And I came to that conclusion reluctantly. I knew that he was a harasser and this, but when you look at it all together, it is impossible to conclude anything other than this man is a sexual predator. And that was shocking to me. He is the president of the United States.
Monique, thank you so much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it. Monique el Faizy speaking to us from Paris.